So for now, it seems that some companies will continue with their corporate social responsibility efforts. But going forward, will CSR become less of a priority in a company's business strategy? I put that question to VanderMolen, Regional President for VanderMolen in Asia.
I think consumers, especially middle-class consumers across the region now, are struggling with questions around product safety, around the viability of their pensions, and as they're questioning basics about their lives, they're starting to place increased responsibility on brands to act in ways that are locally, socially important.
But you know, where companies are concerned, CSR is usually seen to be a good thing to have in good times, but in bad times it may be something that can be sacrificed. So when they're talking about profits on the one hand and talking about CSR on the other as say, a cost to business, do you think the goals are conflicting in any way?
Not at all. I think that's probably an older notion of CSR. I think today there are two parts to CSR. I think one is risk mitigation, which is around your environmental practices, your labor practices, and your environmental practices, which increasingly investors and customers are demanding that companies pay attention to. On the other hand, there's competitive advantage factors that are consumer-facing, which is where companies and brands need to become active socially on issues and in areas that are greatest concerns to their consumers.
And so in your view, how do companies balance those two objectives? How do they get those two objectives and still at the same time look at that bottom line and get the bottom line right?
Well, I think that, in fact, both of these things help the bottom line, because if brands are aligned with issues and social purposes that are important to their consumers, such as the environment, such as addressing poverty alleviation, such as addressing issues around elderly populations, then they can actually breed better loyalty. And in fact, even during a recession, our data says that consumers are willing to pay a premium for brands that are addressing social concerns.
Well, that's the consumer side. Obviously, then companies, listed companies especially, would have to communicate this to their shareholders, to their stakeholders. In your view, in the communication business, how can they best do that?
Well, I think the communications has to be embedded in the center of all corporate social responsibility. And it's not about communicating one-way messages. It's about engaging your stakeholders, whether they're investors, governments, employees, or consumers, in ongoing dialogues about what's important to them, both in good times and in bad, in helping to adapt your agenda to their needs.
VanderMolen from VanderMolen Asia.